Something was wrong. Your moves were definitely at the ranker level, but... And immediately after these words, the thief used the moon cutter skill and jumped the markup with a knife. And dozens of daggers were formed behind the Unima, which the main character easily repelled, just like the trader's attack. And even though every blow of the thief went into the milk, but Snhu understood, his opponent has a wide range of martial arts. He is fast and strong, so it will be hard to defeat him once and for all. And if Nim has 2 lives, then he will definitely return to the soul of our hero. Therefore, we need to act quickly. And in order to get behind the thief, the main character used steps and slashed at him on the back, which horrified the trader. How so? The poison should have already spread all over the body of the guy in the coat and slowed him down. But it was as if nothing had happened to him. Didn't he eat the soup? No, he remembers them for sure that everyone had a big lunch. So he neutralized the poison in some way. But thinking on the battlefield is a double-edged sword. While the trader was trying to recover, Sanhu acted and was ready to strike the next blow. And therefore, in a panic, the thief again cut off the moon cutter spell. But because of the steps, the main character again dodged the enemy's attack and finished the fight in his trademark manner. Song who stuck a sword into Unima's throat. However, this did not kill the thief, and while he was choking on blood, our hero grabbed the defeated enemy by the collar and dragged him to the boss. Bon appetite, puppy. The moon wolf accepted Senghu's offering and tasted the trader's flesh, but at the same second, his body began to dissolve into thin air. And our hero realized that this was the first life in Unima. It'll be unpleasant to meet him again. And now, I need another sacrifice for the moon wolf. It will be very profitable to build a connection with a ranker magician. So forgive Aken, but I will sacrifice you. And throwing the girl's body next to the Tun wolf, the boss gladly accepted this offering, which made Aken's body also begin to disappear. So, it was her first life too, but she won't remember anything because of the poison, and if Snhu meets her again, he will just have to pretend to be the same victim as her. And as soon as the archer finally disappeared, the awakening moon wolf turned into an awakened one. The boss has clearly become bigger, but thanks to Dawn Veil, the monster's stamina has dropped a lot. In this case, the main character will deal with him in no time. Thanks to the medium-level swordsmanship, the moon wolf was cut into minced meat in just a couple of minutes. And extremely pleased with himself, Sanhu remembered that if he kills this boss and touches the moonstone, the mission will be considered completed, but there is one secret that most do not know about. You need to rub the blood of the moon wolf into a glowing stone covered with runes, and then a secret door will open. And when the main character did this, the stone was covered with cracks, split, and revealed the appearance of a massive iron door. Yes, for the first time, when the son of a dick barely overcame the boss of this dungeon and got here. The treasures that he expected to see were already gone, and all that our hero could find were sarcophagi with werewolves inside. Then with a low-rank linguistic skill, Sankus could translate the writing on the stone as you will get a treasure. That will help resurrect the mouth. But now the skill of our hero's translator has reached an average level and the runes have started playing with new colors. You will find a companion who can resurrect your mouth. This time, behind the door under the moonstone, he found 50 werewolves who could not even move a paw. Thus, 300,000 gold for the body parts of the creatures will fully pay off the cost of improving the linguistic skill. Therefore, our hero started the massacre again, and when Sun who finished with the werewolves, his skill with a medium-rank sword improved tremendously. Betraying people and sacrificing them is dirty, but if I don't do it, it will be almost impossible for me to grow up as a swordsman. However, our hero will not betray Ellie. At least not yet. Now he's going to help her get back on her feet with an antidote. And soon the Mac woman opened her eyes and didn't understand what had happened at all. Therefore, the main character initiated her into the course of business. The thief betrayed their group. He probably poisoned everyone. Unfortunately, neither Aken nor Dawn Veil was alive by the time Snhu arrived here. These words greatly saddened the girl, but still thank him very much. If it wasn't for Sanhu, Ollie would definitely have died. It's not worth it. I just did what I had to do. That's exactly why the girl thanks our hero. There aren't many people like him in the world. Well then, Ellie, maybe you can form a party with me. And in the past of another world, the screams of a man who was extremely angry at his little daughter were heard all over the neighborhood of the sleeping area. Fuck her, bitch. Holding a baseball bat in his hands, the openly drunk father stood in front of the girl. Daughter, it's time to get out and bring your mother home. Yes, Ellie was born into a marriage of convenience. Her mother had run away a long time ago, so at that moment she had to make a choice not to die at the hands of an abusive father. And when everyone was asleep, the girl put briquettes of coal right under the nose of this drunkard. And later doctors found that her father died due to poisoning of carbohydrate oxide, but Ellie was not even suspected of anything. That's when she realized she only had to behave naturally, and everyone would believe any lie. Therefore, at present, from the moment the game began, the sorceress behaved seductively and plunged a knife into the throat of every man who stuck to her. And thanks to this, Ellie received the title of a cowardly survivor and was able to settle in this brave new world. By the way, the girl also knew about the secret of the glowing stone with runes guarded by the moon wolf, and about the betrayal of the magician. She was just stalling for time, pretending to be poisoned, but the one who looked the most naive of all was Sanhu, who brutally killed the thief. And right after that, he calmly tried to fool Ellie, and the girl naturally pretended that he succeeded. So she shook his hand. The sorceress had never met such a person as Songhu before, so she would like to know him more. In general, she agreed to form a party with the main character. Meanwhile, in the floating city of this world, the gods gathered at a round table to discuss pressing matters. A young guy named Loki said from the very beginning that people are too weak. Of course, everything will be slow. Grandpa is of course the strongest, wisest and all that, but it seems his head doesn't always work properly. And these words greatly enraged a red-skinned four-armed man named Asura. He no longer intends to tolerate the boy's rudeness. However, the mustachioed man reassured his colleague. It's all right. If people are missing something, we just need to give them an idea. Yes, that's right. We need to make sure that all players are aware of their strength in comparison with others. This should awaken a competitive spirit in them. And let's have a mandatory endurance mission with a time limit. I think complexity C will do. However, the guy with the sharp eyes did not agree with the mustachioed man. With such complexity, no one will be able to complete the quest. Don't worry, I know what I'm talking about. By the way, have you all already chosen a creature for yourself? And Shura likes the gelding, and Kong Mahan is also good. But the glowing figure at the table will choose Ellie. She has a strong foundation of magic. I like a guy named Yu Sang-hoon. Amazing. Is this the one who completed the training the fastest? Is the girl with the golden hair right? And the man with the sharp eyes doesn't realize why Loki chose the guy in the coat. He would have understood if Jance's choice had fallen on Jack Efron. This man immediately stood out from the rest of the Americans. If you describe him in one phrase, then he is an absolute evil, a psychopath. The only thing that brings him joy is murder. However, what are they talking about? I differ from Satan in that I need a slightly different villain. Rude, playing dirty, thinking only about immediate profit, and smart. That's why I chose Yu Sang-hoo. And in this case, a white-haired man with glasses will prepare an ad based on the conversation of his gentleman. And a couple of hours later, all the people in the starting city received a notification about the new patch. The creators are pleased to introduce the rank system to the players and also announce the start of a mandatory mission with a rank difficulty in 15 days. And this angered the people. However, while everyone was panicking, Kang Wuhan was calm. If people read the patch to the end, they would understand that it is very balanced. If they wanted to kill us, they wouldn't bother so much. In other words, there will definitely be a way to complete this mission. And more importantly, I can get an incredible reward. Even if it's to increase my chances of survival, I'll have to dive into this mission. Yes, because of this new update, people all went off the chain. Everyone began to look for allies to complete the mandatory task. And our hero watched this from the window of his room and did not understand why some lost their minds at the moment. The reward is certainly great, but the guy is more worried about the 2 boxes that suddenly appeared in his inventory. Moreover, the first one was a common gift to each ranker for achieving the 21st rank. But the second box is a gift from the god Loki, who is watching Sanhu closely. And the main character guessed about the origin of the first fitting, but the guy did not expect the second gift. Loki, where had he heard that name before? Maybe in the Avengers. All right, what's inside? A scroll of bluff and bragging of a rare class. And after studying it, Sanhu got a passive skill. Now the interlocutors of our hero will take his word for it. and the probability of convincing the opponent during the conversation has increased. The truth is this. Seriously. A book with a passive. Yes, he is of a rare class, but the effects are extremely dubious. The son is perfectly able to convince without them. Well, anyway, it's better than nothing. As suddenly, the main character noticed Ellie approaching him, and therefore he hid his inventory. By the way, the sorceress has already changed her class student, and has become much stronger. So God takes care of the newborn. And so the girl sat down next to Sanhu and asked if the guy completes another Sarong quest. Then his first swordsman circle will awaken, right? Did the coat lover choose a task for himself? Maybe not to ambush the lizard Ludov, or a raid on a horde of skeletons. What about protecting a coastal fortress? Well, the main character, drinking seagulls, thought that he had long found the right person for the next quest, thanks to the information from the cabin boy, a medium named Yuchurin, who focuses on the mission of escorting the upper end. If you complete this task at a big party, the reward will be less, but it's much safer. Therefore, right now our hero and Ellie will go to a meeting with a medium, which turned out to be a red-haired girl with a staff, who, together with her group, was going on another mission to accompany the C-Class. However, a couple of minutes later, Chirin came across people unfamiliar to Kay, who asked her if there were 2 empty seats in the medium's group. Yes, there are such, but the new ones will be accepted only after they show the girl the identification of the soul. And when Chirin saw the information about the unknown, she was incredibly surprised. Miss Ellie, Mac. Wow, Snoo has such high stats, he must be a ranker. But it's not worth it. The main character didn't even go through his first awakening. But Chirin smiled slyly and clarified that since he wants to do it before the mandatory quest, then the guy is definitely a ranker. And here's the infection. The medium is smart, but in any case, it is much stronger than the rest of the members of the Chirin group. So she is glad that 2 whole rankers will go with her. However, at this point, Senghu tensed up. And who's the other one? The hooded figure behind him. Stop. Sharp green eyes. Yes, it is. But unexpectedly for the main character, the medium decided to start the task right now. Therefore, her entire group, including Snha, moved to the territory of the quest. The devil. Well, who does that? Ollie noticed the incomprehensible condition of her partner. Why did he behave like that? Is he all right? And San couldn't take his eyes off the figure in the hoodie any worse.
Long time no see.
You must have me confused with someone else.
No, it's good to meet yourself even in this way, and I wanted to fight you at least once before the mandatory mission begins.
And after these words, the girl took off her hood, and our hero was not thrilled with such a meeting. Decimo, I did pretty well. However, the main character decided not to rush things. Why is Miss Marine following him? And the girl, in turn, just wants to fight with a worthy opponent, that's all. Only here Sanho does not agree. He is much weaker than a swordswoman, even if it doesn't seem so outwardly. Yes, the guy will die a second after the start of the fight. And Rena was only saddened by such words. She does not know why the young man hates battles so much, that he is even ready to insult himself for the sake of refusing them. But no, Sanhui is really weak for a one-on-one battle. Meanwhile, Ellie has asked the 2 to discuss their duel when they reach their final destination. The caravan has already moved away, and okay, they will do so. After that, the main character approached the sorceress, and she immediately asked who is this girl. Marine's magic sword. It's amazing, Ellie's a fan of hers. Can the swordswoman give her an autograph? But the ranker simply refused, and therefore Ellie returned to her companion with an extremely dejected look. And seeing the condition of his girlfriend, Sanho decided to explain that outwardly this girl may seem good, but she is obsessed with battles. Renee doesn't even care how much she can hurt other people. Our hero thought to himself that this mission should be simple. But now, because of the presence of the rankers, everything has only become more complicated. A little later, the medium announced that a group of orcs could attack the caravan in the very near future. Therefore, people should prepare for battle. Let the gelding take care of the front line of the Snhu on the right flank. And Renee wasn't wrong. A couple of minutes later, the caravan was really attacked by orcs. However, people were ready to fight back. Renee chopped up the greenskins with such grace, as if she was chopping vegetables in the kitchen. And this inspired everyone present with the exception of Sungho. What should he do? In a one-on-one battle, the swordswoman will destroy him. As he thought, there was only one way out. A little later, the magic sword dealt with the remnants of the monsters, and the medium praised the people for their good work. So now they are organizing a halt. And when Shirin almost finished cooking the soup, the main character immediately approached the girl and offered her a break. He is the one who will cope with the distribution of portions. The medium was pleased with such care. Everyone else would have just eaten and thanked her at most, but this guy decided to help her. So thanks to Sanhu for that. The girl will leave for a while, and then they will distribute food to everyone together. And the passing Renee was also impressed by the young man's act. Sanho is really a master of martial arts. He is not vain and thinks about others, but according to the main character, his interlocutor is much better than him. She would have defeated the guy in an instant without even trying. And from such a compliment, the swordswoman looked away, which was the perfect moment to add poison to her portion of soup. And after that, Sanhu handed the girl her portion of food, but he couldn't get enough of himself. Things are going just fine. If the young man adjusts the duration of the poison, the probability of his winning, in the event of a battle, will be much higher. Only now, as soon as Renee tasted 1 spoonful of soup, thanks to the technique of the spirit of 3 grams, and the heart of a martial artist, she realized that her food was poisoned. And although this strained the girl, she continued to eat without giving any sign. After all, she had immunity to poisons, as well as other useful passivities that reduced the effects of poisoning to 0. After lunch, the swordswoman hurriedly approached the main character. She has important information here. Her food was poisoned. And it's possible that other people have the same situation, so the guy has to warn everyone, while Renee goes to patrol the area. Sanku naturally pretended to be surprised, but he thought to himself that everything had not gone according to plan. Fortunately, the girl did not suspect him. At the same time, Ellie noticed and immediately guessed the reasons for her companion's concern, and decided to help him. Therefore, the sorceress ran up to the swordswoman and began to charm her teeth. And when Renee heard a touching story about how she looks like Ellie's older sister, the rancor had to agree that when her son's companion talks to her, she automatically becomes Annie. And the sorceress, as if grateful for this broad gesture, hugged the swordswoman's hand and invited her to go on patrol together. But at the same time, Ellie put a curse of weakness on the girl. Only, like last time, Mira didn't notice everything right off the bat, and therefore asked her interlocutor to return to the camp and warn Sanho. First, they put poison on her, and now they put a curse on her. And since the target was a swordswoman, then everyone else can suffer. Now I barely had to pretend to be surprised, agreeing with Renee. However, how was she able to find out about the invisible curse? And a little later, the girls told the medium about everything, so she will strengthen the protection of the territory just in case. And after counting down to the medium, the swordswoman stuck to Sun again, insisting on their training fight. At that moment, the main character realized that it looks like it won't work anymore to justify himself. How about just swapping 10 strokes? Well, the swordswoman agrees if Seonghu promises to fight her after the mission. Okay, that's settled. Well, there are too many eyes here. Let's find another place. And in parallel with the search for a suitable clearing for battle, the main character feverishly thought that he was, after all, a runner in the 21st place in the general system. No matter how strong Renee is, he can withstand 10 blows. The guy has to do it. And when the two rankers found a suitable place, the swordswoman immediately broke the place and attacked Senga on the move. However, he used steps, and thus he dodged 3 blows of the girl. So she stopped for a moment. Is Sunny really trying to find the moment to strike? Or could he really not fight her? And our hero in this short respite came up with a plan. He will simply lure the swordswoman into a trap prepared in advance. But following this thought, the guy almost got a sword in the face. However, he managed to dodge, at the cost of losing his blade. But that wasn't all, because our hero stepped on his own trap. Due to the loss of balance, he accidentally hit the gelding in the knee. And what's even cooler, his luck didn't end there. Swinging his arms, he perfectly hit the chin of the gelding, thereby almost knocking out the girl. And when the swordswoman noisily collapsed to the ground, the main character nervously thought that it didn't matter how exactly it happened. The main thing was that he won. Well, damn it, San was already planning to hold back. How did it all work out? And a moment later, the swordswoman woke up and rubbing her face, she did not even immediately realize that she had lost. Does Sunghu own hand-to-hand combat? But it's obvious, because he has an average martial arts rank. And when the girl heard this, she realized that Sunghu was able to evade all her attacks, because she had anticipated her movement from the very beginning. As it turned out, it was not he who was arrogant, but the swordswoman herself. Therefore, although it is indecent, But Renee wants to ask one question. Why didn't the young man use the blade for the final blow? Ah, so that's what's bothering her. But it just slipped out of my hands, so I had to use my fists. And this upset the swordswoman even more. It turns out that compared to her, who was obsessed with winning, Sanhwa retained a cold mind and was focused more on the process than on the result. So she admits Renee lost today. And the guy doesn't have to be polite to her, because winners don't have to console losers. In the future, the swordswoman will definitely correct the mistakes based on the past sparring. And she hopes that Sanhwa will fight her again in the future. On this note, the girl left, and the main character did not understand what the fuck just happened. Renee almost cried. Did he do something wrong? Apart from this incident, nothing more interesting happened on the 8th day of the trip. The caravan reached its final destination in one piece. In the past, Sanhwa avoided the swordswoman, but probably because of their training fight. Now she herself stopped looking for a meeting with him, and they rarely saw each other. When the merchants entered the city, the main character saw an alert about the end of the mission. Following that, Marine gave him a slight nod before disappearing into the teleportation circles. And only after that Sanhwa exhaled. Finally, you can relax. When suddenly one of the merchants approached him. The old man watched him, and the guy helped the caravan a lot. Of course, he had to protect the merchants, but sharing his food and maintaining order were not the duties of a mercenary. Initially, the elderly man thought that at least half of the things would be damaged due to monsters, but thanks to Sanhwa and his comrades, the entire cargo remained intact. So let the guy take this elixir as a thank you for a good job. And having accepted such a noble gift, our hero was stunned. Yes, it's a rare pheromone extract, which is an important catalyst in the development of magic. It is one of the most expensive products, so Chirin took this mission many times in the hope of getting something similar from an NPC. Ellie, of course, could not help noticing the contents of the bottle, and therefore, she immediately asked Sanhwa to give her this extract. Well, or at least sell it at a discount. An ordinary store sells such potions for 30, but she is ready to buy a drug for 20,000. And to be honest, our hero does not need such a potion, so the sorceress can take it just like that. And as soon as the extract was in Ellie's hands, she explained that there was little time before the mission. So she plans to make a complete upgrade, her equipment, and raise her skills upon returning to the city. Therefore, thank you Sanhwa for such a fitting. The girl's words immediately made our hero think that this was a very sensible decision. Instead of constantly hunting, you need to pump yourself. The things that the young man got are still quite useful, but first he should wake up. Therefore, the main character immediately went to the Temple of the Class Change, in which Philip was glad to see this interesting guy again. And the man is curious to know which path Sanhwa has chosen for himself. The main character, looking at a great many options for further development, began to reflect. The researcher will not suit him. Now the young man's style is based on melee attacks, the rest of the skills are mainly used for support. Sanhwa got this far thanks to his swordsmanship, and the recent sparring with Renee showed the importance of this skill. Perhaps that is why the samurai class is marked as recommended. And Philip naturally noticed the uncertainty of his client, so he explained that if you pay 3 times, you can change the options for choosing a class. This was good news, but nevertheless, the rank mission is already close, and the competition there will not be bad. For such a task, Sanhwa needs to be able to react correctly in any situation. So his choice fell on the further development of the swordsman's skill. And if so, the man congratulates the young man on entering the path of the advanced level of this class. Now the stats, skill level and skill class of our hero has been upgraded. On top of everything else, he received 3 exclusive skills, talisman art, disappearances, as well as ups and downs. The main character has achieved enlightenment, and now he has something to think about. It doesn't matter if it's bad or good, but it's done. The only thing left is training and getting new skills before the rank mission starts. Thus, time flew by during the daily training sessions, and tomorrow the very task should have already begun. When suddenly our hero noticed a strange glow near his bed. It was Jerry who came to him. He was hoping to talk to Sanhwa more, but they don't have much time. With the Dawn rank mission, that breaks the darkness, will take place in the body of a random NPC. It was decided to do this for the sake of ensuring equal conditions for the players. But let Jerry slow down. Does this really mean that Sanhwa will not be able to use his skills? Yes, it is. The player's abilities will be limited by the abilities of the selected NPC. However, do not worry. Jiri and the others will sometimes include heroic characters in the task, which will reduce the difficulty at critical moments of the task. When giving the people from the rank mission, the gods thought everything through carefully. It will be a story about the decisive battle between the heroes and the Demon King before the latter takes over the world. There will be 3 locations in total in the task. The lowlands, where the low-ranking ones will meet the army of demons, the castle above the dungeon, where the king is resting, and finally, the main battlefield, where the high-ranking ones will become the headache of the rulers of these places. These 3 locations are interconnected, and if things don't go well in one of them, it will affect the rest. The actions of each player are critically important, and the most interesting thing is that if Sunhoos completes the mission, he will get a legendary item, mountains of treasures, and, of course, a spare life. And it looks like this dangerous mission will begin very soon, so Jerry wishes our hero good luck. And sometime later, Sanho woke up in the room of some rich man. And once it all started, then first you need to look around. However, when the main character got up and saw his reflection in the mirror, he was stunned. Why the fuck did he get into the body of some rich little girl? And after a small panic attack, Sanku was finally able to call up the status window. So, now his name is Serena, the only princess of the empire. And that's cool, of course, but here are her stats. They're the worst. But don't get all worked up. Judging by them, the siren is a magician. Everything should go well if she doesn't have to go to the love branch. It is quite possible that the princess has good skills. So, she has a swordsman's skill and a low-ranked ice spear with haste. Okay, it's not that bad. But here's the rest. Sewing, playing in the crowd, whining, court conversation, formal dining etiquette. What is it anyway? However, the bewilderment of our hero was interrupted by the system, which activated a side mission, the escaped princess. The siren was cut off from her warriors due to the attack of demons. She needs to escape from the monsters. And as soon as he read it, a dark knight and 3 skeletons broke into his room. Damn, our hero has not met such mobs yet. Is it possible to defeat them in the worthless body of a princess? Of course, he has either a sword or a sword, so there is a choice. But Sanho's thoughts were interrupted by the voice of the Dark Knight, from which the guy got the effect of fear. And the young man did not expect such a development of events at all. He can't even lift a finger. Now the probability of survival in this battle with such stats and skills tends to 0. Apparently there's nothing you can do about it. Now the shoe will simply be killed, and it will start already in his room. At the same time, in the soaring city of this world, the event administrator could not believe that the siren had gone to Loki's favorite. The player should not have fallen into the body of the princess, because she plays too important a role in the conquest of the Demon King. If you follow the script, the siren must escape from the monsters and join a remote suicide squad. But now, because of Senhu, things may not go according to plan. The princess might just die if this guy decides to fight. And in this case, the mission will fail. However, at this moment, the admin saw that due to the dignity of the princess, the return of everything to normal, Senghu temporarily transformed his usual skills into combat and regained control of his body. And if so, then in this task, it is impossible to believe the usual description of abilities. After all, even what might seem useless at first glance, as a result, may be necessary in a dangerous situation. Therefore, the main character activated abnormal salsa, ballet, and the traditional dance of the empire, thanks to which he received an impressive boost to dexterity. And the skills of belly dancing, tap dancing, and endless curiosity had a synergistic effect on all of the above. Therefore, our hero easily dodged the skeleton's attack and elegantly pierced his skull with a rapier. And after that, he easily demolished the towers of another representative of the undead, performing an elegant somersault. And after that, standing firmly on his feet, the main character realized that he was still able to fight. And so, with the help of the talisman art, he filled his blade with fire mana, which caused the other skeletons to freeze in place. And it's very likely that the undead began to fear this sword energy. However, Sankus was gaping, because at the same moment another skeleton warrior attacked him from the left flank. Only now the agility of the siren was at the most exorbitant level, and therefore our hero was able to evade, and again pierced the skull of the impudent undead with a rapier. Fortunately, Senghu has someone to take an example from in terms of fencing. And immediately after this thought, he combined the skill of disappearing with tap dancing and rushed to the Dark Knight, who immediately prepared for a counterattack. However, a two-handed sword is not the kind of weapon that can break through a nimble siren. The Dark Knight stupidly missed, and the main character stood on the blade and hands of his opponent, as if imitating the graceful jump of a cat, which angered the Dark Knight. How dare this brazen girl play with him? However, Sanho was not going to stop there and activated a high-ranking waltz, thanks to which he was able to dance well with his opponent. And to be honest, the undead didn't like that at all. Therefore, our hero invited his opponent to complete this performance. And then Sanho pierced the rapier and the chest of the Dark Knight and blew him up from the inside. The shock wave nearly blew the main character to the other end of the room, but he was able to stay on his feet. Only he didn't understand why the explosion was so strong. Is it really because of high intelligence stats? And it's not so bad for magicians to be. In addition, for killing monsters, the system will send him some more mission points. As Jerry said, the difficulty of this dungeon is very high. Therefore, top rankers should be present here. As for Sungho himself, he got the role of a princess on a mission to save her. Is this the norm? It seems to the young man that he has stumbled upon some kind of tank, but on the other hand, this can lead to an interesting denouement of events. In addition to destroying the king and escaping the princess, our hero has another side task to get a rune blade. But suddenly, the system notified Sanghu that he had completed the task and received 100 mission points. And so he lost the train of his thoughts. In addition, after that, our hero heard someone's voices. As it turned out, they belonged to a trio of guys who, when they entered the princess's room, looked at their mistress with surprise. Who is this lovely girl? Player or NPC? However, this was immediately realized by a man named Shin Wongram, and he could not sleep peacefully, thinking about possible troubles in the life of the princess. Therefore, the knight is incredibly happy to see the siren in good health. And since this man is so formally communicating with Senghu in such a situation, it means that this is the same non-player hero. So the other three are probably players. And they, by the way, immediately clung to the siren from all sides in an attempt to get acquainted with this beauty. But this angered and outraged Vungram to the depths of his soul. How did these ignorant soldiers dare to speak to the princess in such a tone? A loyal knight of the empire will not stand aside if the guys continue in the same spirit. The players noticed that the man tied a skill pill of reinforcements and immediately realized that he was a thrice awakened NPC. So they immediately prostrated themselves before him and his princess, begging for mercy. And the main character immediately realized that he should play the role of a siren. After all, if it works out, then he will be able to control the players. Therefore, right now the young man will take the initiative in his own hands. Now he is not a Sanhu, but a noble lady, a princess. A proud woman who has nothing to fear. He needed to get into this role as quickly as possible, so he activated the skills of charisma, etiquette, bluff, and aristocrat. And at the same moment, the siren asked the trio of pathetic fools how they dared to insult her. And having said this, the son of Skins became proud of himself. There was a ferocious temper in the girl's voice, so he would continue in the same spirit. In a normal situation, insulting a princess is an unforgivable act. But with the Demon King already around the corner, she might as well forgive the soldier. And when the players were relieved to praise the siren for her mercy, the main character thought that everything was going much better than he thought. Here and now, Songhu is the weakest princess who has just taken the throne. And at the moment, he knows that the people in the maze were ambushed. But he still has little information. And if a young man asks something like why he is here, he will be immediately discovered. So he decided to turn to Wangram. Sirena is worried that a lot of people have suffered from ambushes by dirty riders. However, the man assured the princess that she should not worry. Although the army was in a hurry, but still the men who are already here and will arrive soon are undoubtedly strong. In addition, the knight is ready to personally defend the girl in case of danger. And our hero thought again. 100 people is the number of people who have been identified. If you think about it, most often players fall into the bodies of the twice awakened. There are not so many heroic NPCs, and everything is done for the sake of balance in the mission. In any case, my son has another task that he did not have time to look at. So, the rune blade is a divine sword made by a mysterious ancient force. However, in order to awaken its true power, a great sacrifice is required. The siren must give her life to the legendary artifact to do this. The reward is 10,000 mission points. And after reading everything in full, our hero was noticeably fucked up. Did the gods want him to sacrifice himself? No, you need to think about the good. Even in the worst case, if Sunghu has to complete this task, the reward will cover all the disadvantages. In addition, the rune blade is already in the hands of the princess, and his stats with skills are really good without awakening. He also has a scale that can be filled with killing monsters. The blade captured 3 groups of skeletons and a dark knight, and this added 13 points to the siren. Out of 100,000 needed. Hell, apparently Sanhu won't be able to unlock it without sacrificing his life. But maybe there is another way. When suddenly our hero's thoughts were interrupted by another group of players who were immediately attacked by a Vungram. However, they did not take the threats from the NPC seriously, and after that an old man came out of the crowd of people. And he was happy to see the knight. Vungram, in turn, was also glad to meet an old friend named Khan Hassan. The old man, by the way, was with the Imperial Guard, so he had no problems. And while the legendary NPCs were communicating with each other, another person approached our hero, in whom he immediately recognized Kong Mahan. And it seems that the ranker still thinks that the princess is an ordinary non-script, so the top needs to be calm. Therefore, he turned to Count Hassan, with the hope that the old man would share his wisdom and propose a plan for further actions. And the wizard will be happy to do it. In his opinion, they have 2 ways. The first one is to find scattered detachments. They will be able to work together to have a better chance of success, but the Demon King can recover during this time. And the troops holding back the horsemen may fall, and then everyone will have a hard time. And the second way is to get to the center of the dungeon. Although there are many dangerous monsters there, it's not that difficult to do it. In any case, people will have to fight them sooner or later. Immediately after these words, a side quest was highlighted for the players, giving them a chance to choose. And this pleased Kong Mahan. Since this is a C-rank mission, the main thing in it is safety, so it's better for them to unite first. But his speech was interrupted by a siren. No, they will start moving towards the center of the dungeon, and objections are not accepted. She's the princess here, which means she has to make a decision. Kong Mahan was stunned by this statement. Is this girl really trying to tell him that if he disobeys, he will lose his head? And then, why did the system give players a choice? Therefore, since there was such a dance, the man bowed to the princess, he would follow her in any case. And this submission pleased Sanho. In that case, they will start advancing immediately, and Sir Vungram and Hassan will protect the girl in the rear. A little later, the main character realized that the more people in the party, the more monsters appear. Before the others could do anything, Mahan immediately slaughtered the undead. And it's no wonder, because he finished awakening the legend of the 3rd stage. And Sanhu would also love to play an active role in the attack, but this will lead to the disclosure of his identity as a player. So he is forced to be only a bystander. However, not to annoy other players is not at all in the spirit of Senghu, so he asked Count to use one spell. And since the princess wants it, the old man is organizing everything now. Simultaneously with the explosion magic cast, the main character pulled out a rune blade to absorb the magic of the Count. And at the same second, the siren launched fire projectiles with the help of the legendary sword, which destroyed the monsters on the spot. What the fuck? What kind of creature stole my murder?
It's me, the siren.
But why did you do it?
Well, he was surrounded by monsters, and I decided to help him. Are you really dissatisfied with something?
No, it's all right. And the main character thought to himself that even Kong Mahan can't go against the princess, an important NPC of this quest. So if Sanhu doesn't reveal, he will rake in the juiciest rewards with a ranked mission for himself. However, after a couple of moments, Kong Mahan decided not to give up and prove his point. If the princess gets injured, the morale of all the warriors will suffer greatly. But the siren is not afraid to get hurt. She can't just stand by while the others are trying their best to save the world. And these words touched Vungram, how happy he is to serve just such a princess. At the same time, Mahan realized that he had no choice here again. But let the siren not relax, he will never miss the opportunity to kill the impudent nup. And Sanhu himself thought that he could not afford to retreat for anything. In any case, he will be in the black, and not this pathetic bastard in front of him. After a small battle of looks, the siren ordered everyone to start advancing. In which case, she will cover the soldiers from the rear. A little later, a group of players quickly moved deeper into the dungeon. All because the average level of strength of this party is quite high. In addition, there are 3 thrice awakened among them. When suddenly, the reflection of our hero was interrupted by a guy in a red jacket, who ordered everyone to stop. And in the same second, he defused the trap, for which the system gave him 30 mission points. This made it clear to Sanhu that the essence of the task is not only in killing monsters, so he should come up with a plan. At the same time, Marine was fighting on the front line in another part of the current mission area. And to be honest, there were at least a dozen monsters here, but the swordswoman indifferently chopped up skeleton warriors. Her body was so light. Renee only needs to use the sword skills. There is no need to use the skills of the third stage in this battle. Because even against 3 monsters, the latter did not have a chance to hit a clever girl. It seemed that the undead should not have the instinct of self-preservation, but this swordswoman seemed to instill fear in their being. And the girl naturally used her aura to the fullest. She allowed Renee to use the key of the Sword King, which led to the instant annihilation of monsters. However, even so, the swordswoman is still not up to the Sanhu level. Therefore, after the mission, she will definitely request an official sparring. And at the same moment, the main character felt a chill, and then hiccuped. Did someone remember him? It doesn't matter. And what does Count Hassan think? Do they still have a long way to go? And the old man is not sure. Although this labyrinth belongs to the Empire, almost all records about it have long been lost. In any case, with a princess and soldiers in the squad, the monsters will not stop them. At the same time, a group of players had to stop, because there was a big void ahead. Perhaps there are dangerous monsters there, and the intelligence team sent ahead confirmed Mahan's fears. A Lich and a Hell Knight are waiting for them in this passage. And as far as Count Jose remembers, they are very strong. These monsters are among the strongest in the undead class. With the current fighting power, they cannot be defeated in a fair fight. However, Mahan was eager to go further right now. And if it wasn't for the princess, the players would have gone ahead after him to the slaughter. The Siren believes that it is better for them to make stops here, unite with other attacking squads, and only after that, go to fight with strong representatives of the undead. That's what people did. And warming himself by the fire, Mahan wondered how he could get rid of the princess. If they meet 4 heads, and her servants stand up for the girl, then the spearman will lose. Therefore, Mukana should choose a strategy of ardent appeasement, and only he wanted to start implementing. Treating the princess with delicious food, when he noticed that an idle dinner had already been served to the siren. And the main character sensed in his gut how Mukana was staring at him, so he immediately asked what the piggy wanted to say there. However, he only lowered his gaze and replied that he was passing by. And Mahan thought to himself that she was a princess, and she was a princess in Africa. Demanding something like that in a dungeon is something a guy will never understand. At the same time, Sanhu also gave himself up to reflection, because the goal in the mission world is to become the successor of God. And the guy knows more than anyone how useless he is. What should a person do if he doesn't even have a chance to rise from the bottom? Our hero knows only one answer to this question. Pull others down. Yes, this is a dirty method, but there is no denying its effectiveness. First of all, you need to be careful, follow the rules of etiquette. If it seems to Sanhu that it is most profitable for him to kill all the players, then he will do it without a doubt. He has no conscience, so he won't regret what he did. In the worst case, our hero will commit suicide in such a way that the blade will remain sealed. In this scenario, at least no one will be able to get a reward. And sometime later, a noise was heard from the direction of the big void, and Kanguhan could not understand how this was possible. If their squad was in full force. However, according to intelligence, it was another group of people who attacked the higher undead. And after these words, the spearman without hesitation rushed to the aid of the players, because among them was his girlfriend. The demonic sword of the gelding. Therefore, the guy with an extremely serious look took out his weapon, and used the skill of a cannon spear. And he threw it straight into the chest of the infernal knight. However, after a couple of moments, the monster screamed heartrendingly, and Kong Mahan realized with horror that he had not left a scratch on the higher undead. The infernal knight was extremely dissatisfied with the unsuccessful attack of Kong Mahan, but he decided not to retreat. And therefore he threw his spear at the higher undead again. And this time the damage to the monster was significantly higher than in the previous one. The guy's weapon nailed the Hell Knight to the wall, so he decided to continue his attack on the undead, with the intention of finishing off this creature. However, it was a trap of the infernal knight. The monster screamed loudly again, and knocked the spearman to the ground in one fell swoop. Now Kong Mahan himself was at a disadvantage, and he was convulsively thinking to himself that with his prepared body and expensive things, he should have easily won. At the same time, our hero ordered Sir Graham to help the rest of the warriors and Hassan to detain the Lich. And since the princess wishes it, it will be fulfilled. The heroic NPC knight easily hacked the skeleton warriors left and right. And the old wizard did not lag behind, crowding the higher undead with holy magic. Senghu himself did not stand aside either. He used his blade, which absorbed the magic of the explosion, on Mahan's opponent, and thereby helped the latter. True, even though the infernal knight received significant damage, however, he only froze in place for a couple of seconds from the magic of the main character. And that's not good. If this goes on, the princess will be mixed with dust. And the two players standing behind the siren were thinking in the same way as Sanhu. They attacked these monsters too quickly. Therefore, the archer invited his friend to observe the situation, and in case of anything, just run away from the battlefield. For if they stay in place for a long time, they will die here like lousy dogs. They don't need to kill the Demon King to get points. You can just hunt monsters. Even if there are not many mission points, it will be enough to acquire special items from the system. And the archer's interlocutor seemed to have such a plan. Well, just excellent. Therefore, they will do so. Only Sanhu heard all this, which means that nothing will work out for the guys. As soon as our hero thought about it, his body took off on its own and immediately blew off the head of an archer, who had started to desert from the battlefield. His friend immediately shouted at the siren, saying that she was a crazy bitch and tried to cast a spell into her. However, the princess cut off the tower to this asshole as well. And after that, holding the head of one of the dead in her hand, the girl loudly declared that these people were cowards, who had left a detachment that risked their lives in battle. They wanted to escape right in the middle of the heat of battle. And the siren can forgive the defeated, but never deserters. Everyone will fight to the last breath, and that's it. And so that Sanhu's speech seemed convincing to the soldiers, and he activated the dignity of the princess, coupled with bluffing and threats. Thanks to this, the words of the siren greatly influenced all of her warriors. And for that matter, Mahan will never forget the faces of the bastards who tried to escape her. So everyone needs to do their job properly. And in the same second, the players pounced on the higher undead with redoubled enthusiasm. And the main character was glad. At least, he was able to raise the morale of the warriors. But this was not the whole impact that Sanhu could make. Therefore, together with Khan Hassan, they created a powerful explosive spell to cast him straight into the lich. And so, with the help of such magical support, the players were able to finish off this supreme undead. However, the Hell Knight continued to rampage. Now he's going to attack the warriors through the corridor. But suddenly, a man stood in the way of this monster, whose weapon was his own fists. And he beat this monster down with just one poke. I've been drafted recently, so I'm a little crazy right now. Let's get this over with as soon as possible. However, the main character did not like this new character. Who is he anyway? Well, here Count Hassan can tell the princess. This is Soldier Yayan, who has single-handedly beaten the Hell Knight with his fists right now. And this made a strong impression on the Shu. This man is strong. The battle was over in an instant. The rest of the players also did not make a mistake, and, together, they generally had a good fight. Therefore, after the destruction of the three monsters, it was time for further preparation to advance to the center of the dungeon. And it seems to the awakened third stage of the ruthless Saint Kimihan that the princess wants to convince the heroes to stand on the front line. In this case, it may become a problem. Yes, it is. Also to the awakened third stage great magician Yubaekwu. It seems that this can lead to numerous disputes about collecting and dividing mission points. Therefore, Hyan is convinced that it is worth organizing an expedition to the center of the dungeon, only as part of the awakened of the third level. This option will definitely be safe, unless, of course, the soldier who goes alone from the Motorobe Knight goes with them. And our hero at the same time tried to talk to this great warrior. Soldier Yahan doesn't mind giving the princess a couple of minutes, but he just walked past the siren, and it infuriated Sanha. How dare this jerk ignore the siren itself? And here everything was simple. Soldier Yahan did not reply to the princess because of an important matter. If people have rested, then they should move on right now. However, the warriors asked him to wait a bit. They still hadn't finished the discussion. Only this is bullshit. It would be better if they spent time training, as befits real soldiers. But what is Yahan talking about? For that matter, would he mind being in the vanguard? It's not a problem, but haven't some of you already received the mission points that you all so greedily desire? And one of the girls of the warrior squad immediately brazenly asked the man how he found out about it. Is he really a gambler? She's never heard his name, so who is he? Only now, it was not worth it to be impertinent. Yekhin immediately grabbed his interlocutor by the collar. Speak more politely. Do I look like a clown? But then Renee came to the aid of her teammate, who tried to hack the man with her blade. Only with 2 fingers, he blocked the sword's lunge, which made the girl repeatedly regret her rash decision. And looking into the eyes of Soldier Jahano, Marine became noticeably nervous, and thought that this man had blocked her super-fast surprise attack without putting any effort into it at all. Only Sanho could do that, only he can't be that strong. However, the girl does not intend to give up so easily. Her right sword stings like a bee, and her left one flutters like a butterfly. And in the same second, Reens could snatch her blade from Yekon's fingers, for which she instantly received his mighty fist in the face. Such a blow, as in the fight with Sanhu, almost knocked out the swordswoman, but with great difficulty. She was able to raise herself slightly to hear her opponent. After all, your swordsmanship lacks strength, it's too crude. When you make a deceptive maneuver, you show problems in your style as you move. Only now, it's only been 4 months since Renee joined the mission, and in that case, Johan takes back his words. The girl has an incredible talent. However, such condescending communication with a top ranker deeply angered one of the warriors. So he rushed at the man to teach him a lesson. But Yekhen simply turned his head to the aggressor, and just one look from him was enough to reduce the ardor of the warrior. The latter even had the feeling that he was a pathetic frog who dared to jump towards the snake. And all the other players were also petrified by Yekon's sharp gaze. Well, what is this incredible thirst for murder? And he, having not waited for the attack, clicked irritably. Now listen up. I'm not a player or an NPC, but something more. I am exactly God. And I came here for all of you. But such a statement made Kagma Khan lose his temper. Didn't God bring them into this world? It turns out that Yekhen stole people from their reality. It's your fault that we're all suffering here. Immediately after that, Mahan rushed at the man with a spear at the ready, but he also slapped his fist in the face. For the record, it wasn't Yekhen who sent people into this mess. In fact, he is an ordinary spectator, but according to the players, there is no difference. They have to kill this bastard. In that terrifying moment, Song-Hu and Renee were thinking the same thing. Up to this point, discontent had been accumulating in people for a long time. Now their eyes were overshadowed by madness. And if Yahan is really God, then let him be merciful to the unfortunate players. And the man seemed to hear the mute request of this too. He will not kill soldiers who dare to declare their desire to kill God. However, he would make them wish for death. And the words were followed by punishment in the form of a preventive beating for the rioters. And a couple of moments later, all the players were defeated, and Yekhen stepped on the hand of one of them. The man does not mind fighting further, but he cannot guarantee the safety of the players' lives. And since no one wants to continue the fight, it seems that they painlessly came to a peaceful solution. So they will continue. Let Khan Hassan open this door. And the wizard had no choice but to obey God. But he needs the princess' help. And only when our hero approached the old man, the door opened. The thing is that this labyrinth was sealed by the ancient ruler of these places. Therefore, the door reacts only to the descendants of the imperial family. Well, Sanhu understood everything. However, inwardly, he tried to figure out a further plan of action. He must not act recklessly. Our hero has too little information about this god, and provoking these people is like adding fuel to the fire. Meanwhile, Yekhen went to the door and asked everyone to follow him inside. The princesses and her subordinate NPCs, as well as some players, including a friend of Mahan named Choi Chelchen, were the first to respond to the call of God. And even a gelding. Did she really just want to let this jerk do what he wanted? However, according to the swordswoman, nothing will change if she stays here. And if so, then the spearman will go along with them. He doesn't have time to convince the others. He doesn't like that bastard, but for now he'll have to follow him. And in the room that opened after the door was opened, Soldier Yekhen immediately noticed humanoid monsters, and also effortlessly defeated these creatures with the help of his heavy fists. At the same time, Shu was intensely watching God. He uses his limbs in his fighting technique. Yes, this man is a typical representative of martial arts. Although these are simple methods of self-defense, but they hide a huge and crushing power. As they say, our hero is not afraid of someone who knows tens of thousands of blows. He is afraid of someone who studies one stroke tens of thousands of times. Yahan is just the same kind of guys, so you should not make him an enemy. This world or game is created to determine the successor of God. Therefore, you need to be friends with the latter just the same. Sanhu will be able to take revenge when he himself can rise to the level of the likes of Yahello. But now he just needs to collect information. Therefore, while all the other wars were fighting monsters, the princess asked the Lord God in a sweet voice to answer her a couple of questions, but Yahan only grinned contemptuously. If you don't want to see your teeth without the help of a mirror, don't ever talk to me like that again. And I don't want to hear such things from a man's mouth.
Don't get too excited. You're a princess.
Yeah, of course. Don't make a fool of me. And after such an extremely informative conversation, our hero realized that Johan is still a god. It won't be a problem for him to figure out who he really is. Therefore, Sanhu should treat this man as a moderator. In this case, he will immediately get down to business. What does Sanhu need to do in order to get out of this world? And now it looks like a serious conversation. In general, Yahan knows many ways, but the easiest one is to stay alive until the very end. But our hero is interested in the option where he quickly gets out of here, and yes, there is one. To do this, you need to attract the attention of God. If a person likes one of the higher beings, then he can be chosen to complete the game. Sanhu may call this a special selection.
In that case, can you get me out of here?
No, I don't want to. Well, the main character understood. Then let the man answer why he and the other gods created this world. However, what is he talking about? Yahan is just an observer, but that's not what Sanhu is asking about. What was the purpose of such a strange world when the gods created it? Couldn't they have chosen their successors right away? And to be honest, it's because the gods are not omnipotent, as it may seem at first glance. Yes, the likes of Johan don't know everything in the world, just like they can't do what they want. I've probably heard that it's not the strongest who survives, but the one who survived the strongest. People reveal their true potential only in extreme conditions. Talents and incompetence, weak-strong, men and women, old-young, people and other types. If you push them with their foreheads, then the most suitable one survives in the end. And judging by Sanhu's reaction, he's not angry at all after learning such important information. Nayan had just said that people were just expendable for an experiment, and the young man in front of him did not even raise an eyebrow. I'm not used to saying that. But you're also very unusual.
Thank you for your kind words.
However, the main character thought to himself that one day he would definitely smash Khan's contented face on the asphalt. Well, out loud Sanhaz asked something else. Why did the man personally come here? Can't he just create a hero? And this is a very acute issue. To deal with the Demon King, players need at least 100 thrice awakened, as well as 4 times awakened, who is in fact already a demigod. Yekins and his kind simply cannot create such a creature out of nothing, so they decided that a god like him would fulfill the role of a hero. However, Yan alone should not kill the Demon King. And you can raise the class just the same by performing many feats. In return, Yekin can provide them with various items. And the main character did not understand at all what the man was talking about. But at the same moment, the warrior, who I had already attacked God earlier, resumed his old ways and interrupted the dialogue between the princess and the hero. A man should explain everything normally. However, Johan just squeezed this impudent man's neck and knocked him out on the spot. He had previously told people to communicate with him more respectfully. At the same time, the main character ordered Sir 1 Gram to take this unfortunate man and bring him to the healer. But Renee was more interested not in the victim, but in how Yekhen did it. How could he counterattack so quickly? But what is this swordswoman talking about? It's obvious. God just foresaw everything. And even though he has already said it before, it's better to repeat it again. Due to the fact that Renee adds extra blows when she changes the sword, all her weak points come out. Simply put, her blade mastery is too raw. But the man will not prompt you anymore. Only now Renee was badly hurt, thank God, so she decided to try her luck. Can Yan take her as an apprentice? But no, God is not interested. However, if the swordswoman can get more than 100,000 mission points, then he will teach her everything he knows himself. And this statement startled Sanha. To earn such a number of points, you need to perform many feats. Yes, they only give 50,000 points for killing the Demon King himself. No, it's too adventurous. Rinit will definitely give up the idea of becoming a disciple of God. However, she briefly agreed with Yekon's proposal. Therefore, once they have agreed, it is worth them to continue on their way. And from such strange events, the main character could barely pull himself together. Okay, if the swordswoman dies in the hunt for mission points, then he will only benefit, do not worry about it. At the same time, the wizard players, led by Yub and Fu, decided to take risks for the sake of getting much more mission points. And from this it follows that Kong Mahan and the clan should be at the forefront. However, this statement angered the spearmen. Why should he listen to some magician who is only capable of quietly conjuring from behind the shock group? Wars are already on the front line, and every second they put on the edge of life. And if wizards are so self-confident, then why don't they take their wands and go to the vanguard themselves? If you think about it, almost everyone who died at the hands of the princess during the escape were magicians and archers, weren't they? The wizards were finally enraged by Mahan's words. How will this bastard fight without support from the rear? And the main character, who calmly observed this situation, was thinking in parallel. So far, he has managed to score 84,000 points. No fucking way. For killing 2 players, he was given 3,000 points from each, and if so, then Sunhu is obliged to sacrifice someone. Therefore, he will give the players bait, and very fat. And immediately after thinking over the plan, the siren intervened in the conflict between the spearmen and the magicians. Could it be that men are afraid to fight for fear of death? In this case, they don't have to worry, because all the warriors will be able to find a new life. It's all about the Phoenix world. This is an item that is able to resurrect soldiers who have fallen in battle. When the war with the Demon King is over, the princess promises to immediately provide each hero with such a feather. And the magicians, of course, were confused by this statement. They had never heard of such items, however, if we recall the usual reward of the mission, in the form of an additional life. Then it is quite possible. Only here. It was a bluff. Sunhu just took the phoenix feather out of his head, and it's impossible to check his words. My God, how can you believe in the existence of such a good thing? But if the bait is taken, then he must lie to the end. Therefore, when Yuba and Ku asked the princess about the details of using the pen, the main character confidently replied that as long as there is a body, anyone who owns this item can resurrect anyone, regardless of the amount of time that has come since death. And many warriors immediately wondered, and how much could a phoenix feather cost in their main game world? And a couple of moments later, everyone unanimously decided that they would be able to profitably sell this piece of goods there. Yes, people think right. In addition to the Phoenix Empire, the princess will also give out any artifact from her treasury to choose from. Moreover, the person who performs the greatest feat and personally defeats the Demon King will receive this runic blade, the treasure of the imperial family. And since the reward is so great, the warriors think that there is nothing wrong with taking risks, because if anything happens, they will still get an extra life. Even Mahan's assistant whispered to her boss that they should consider returning to the front line. And that same guy, who loves to talk to God, immediately decided to go into battle first. Even if you don't take into account the extra lives, he really needs this runic blade. His Spirit Lord class consumes too much mana, but with a 200% bonus from the legendary princess weapon. Yes, you understand him. Marine will also go to the front line. Since there will be additional rewards, there is no point in refusing. Okay, Kong Mahan has also made a decision. Then the group will go to the vanguard, and the spearmen will not accept a refusal. In addition, in fact, they will not be on the real front line. It will be held by that side, and top rankers. So the spearmen's subordinates can trust him. And anyway, since when did they become so cowardly? And after these soothing words, the people of Mukun returned to their former state of mind. They were ready for work and defense. Only now, according to Yuba and Kfu, despite the award, not everyone can recover straight to the front line. Therefore, they should divide the troops into the vanguard, the middle, and the rearguard. The group, and those who are aiming for an additional reward from the princess, go to the vanguard. Magicians and archers will be in the middle, and those who lack skill, or those who are afraid of death, will go to the rearguard. Of course, warriors can be attacked from the rear with the help of a conditional secret passage, but they are still safer there than in the vanguard. And listening to this plan, Sanhu did not even expect such seriousness. It's not bad that he motivated the players. Only here's the Hosen account, something is not clear. Is there really such a thing in the Empire? Well, by the way, yes, Wangram has never heard of the existence of phoenix feathers either.
Of course you haven't heard of him. I made it up.
But why did the siren lie to her warriors? And after such a simple question, Senho realized that this too was becoming problematic. Who would have thought of an NPC lying? The players believed in the words of the princess, but the real NPC will never be led to lies. Therefore, the siren told her subordinates that if she had not lied to those people, they would not have acted. She had no other choice. The girl had to lie to change the mood of the warriors. But it's still not clear to the old man when this siren managed to become so insidious. But in view of the threat to all living things, he will pretend that he does not know anything. And the princess is grateful to the magician for such trust. But what about Sir Van Gram? Only here the knight can't accept even such a lie for salvation. Therefore, the main character switched to the good old method of evoking pity. In any case, the siren will not live a long and happy life. To save this world, she had already sacrificed herself to get here. So if she is destined to die, the princess will certainly achieve her goals, and at any cost. Therefore, a man can just quietly watch on the sidelines, and only after these words, in an engram, gave in to the siren. He would follow her wishes. And when the girl left, Count Hassan put a rock on his old comrade's shoulder, and decided to clarify something for him. It is the princess who will suffer the most because of this decision. She had such a pure soul. She was nicknamed the Narcissus of the Empire. But she had to lie because of the deplorable situation in which they found themselves. Deep down, the siren condemns herself. And since the old man thinks so, that's right, the princess decided to give her life for the sake of the common good. How could Wangram doubt her? And our hero was thinking at that moment that if these non-inscriptions start asking questions again, when he starts killing people, before that happens, Singh should get rid of the most problematic ones. Some time later, although the difficulty was high, things were going well. The assault squad's mission had less difficulty than expected. The battle on the plains, where the low levels fought face to face, and had a better chance of failure. However, the players coped. The defense of castles that involved medium-high and medium-low ranks went almost without a hitch. Of course, those who participated could not have known about anything. In the midst of defending the castle, Miss Ellie was warned that the enemy had come too close to the walls. However, the sorceress, imbuing mana and the magic sphere, ordered everyone to stay in their places. If they hold out a little longer, then she will cope with this problem on her own. Only now the defenders of the castle are not in that position. And after that, as if in confirmation of the words of Ellie's interlocutor, the whole wall shook. And cracks even began to appear on it. The reason for this was an overgrown org, which the monsters used as a battering ram. However, the players immediately reacted to this attempt to break through the fortification. And the response in the form of a volley of arrows followed immediately. Only to a huge monster, such an attack was nothing more than a mosquito bite. But at the same moment, Alice finished her magic. The magic sphere was completely soaked in the girl's mana. And that meant only one thing right now: this overgrown org would take on the role of a barbecue. And such an attack literally killed the monster in an instant, which inspired the defenders of the castle. That's a blow. But it's too early to relax. People need to hold out until sunset. A little later, the magic sphere continued to work in automatic mode. Mission experience points poured into Elle's pocket like a river.